the idea here is that we will, before it becomes fully live, I'm going to vacuum out the entirety of this room. And then once that's done, we will be adding a bit of a layer of water down here that's going to be touched by a couple of things. Batteries, more than likely, as they're generating a bit of heat. But ideally, I would kind of like to either deliver steam to the room to start with, just so that there's an environment of steam in here, or bring in some very, very hot water that is ready to become steam at the slightest increase of temperature. So that we very quickly get a complete atmosphere in here of steam. And then once that's the case, I can, well, you know what, I could probably have a thermal active down at the bottom for that reason, because that'll very quickly vaporize the liquid into steam. Once this whole room is a steam room, the idea is I'm going to have a steam turbine at the top, which will take the hot 200-degree steam out, and will return it as 95-degree water. That's going to be perfect for me. From that point on, this whole loop is sorted. The machines in here will be made out of steel, so they'll easily be able to handle that temperature, because they'll be able to go as high as almost 300 degrees, 275. And some of them will be even higher, depending on the machine it is. But all of the heat that they're generating, which normally is something I have to actively cool, that thus use energy to get rid of, I will actually convert into energy. So this room will be intentionally running hot. And then I'll be recovering a bit of the energy that went into the room as more power for me. It's not going to be, it's certainly not going to be like a perpetual motion device. It's not going to be making more power than I'm putting in by any level of the imagining, but it will recover quite a lot of the wasted energy. Well, reality veil, you're right in that. It might, but that requires some planning. For example, if you're making steel out and you're running it through a smelter refinery and then using then running that through aquatuners or just running it through a steam room, you can actually recover the energy. You can run energy positive. But there are only a couple of instances where that kind of relationship can be maintained. For the most part, it's going to run energy negative, but it'll run significantly less energy negative than it would otherwise. Basically, I'm going to try and recover as much waste as I can. So with this, whereas heat is usually a waste, it's a byproduct of the process, I'm going to be turning that heat into an actual desired product, which will then be processed further into energy. So I'm cutting back the waste where it exists. In real life, I imagine they do things very similar to this. In fact, I'm fairly certain they do. In quite a lot of... Oh dear, what are you made of? What's the temperature here? 95, 75. Oh, we have pushed it. It's the metal refinery. The metal refinery pushed the liquid in this loop to a very high level. Now, some of that is being let out. So we're actually watching the system do its work. We're allowing some of the liquid out and then bringing in fresh, very cool petroleum. But yeah, we do need to address that. Oh my goodness. Yeah, okay. Disable auto repair, disable auto repair. Same with this, disable auto repair. This needs to be disabled auto repair. Okay. For the time being, I'm gonna let that run, and I'm gonna replace these. But this is what we need. I need everything basically to be made of steel, wherever possible. Nothing's going down here. Not going great. Still need a bit of work over there, but we're getting there, little by little. Actually, before I build these, I'm going to need someone to get in there with ladders first. Can I analyze that? No, it's not something I analyze. But yeah, that was a problem. But, you know, it's shown me what I can get rid of. Well, I need that there. This one I kind of need because it is running the generators, but let's go ahead and break that down as well. This is high enough of a priority that I need everything here to be done as a 9. Made of steel, please. For the time being, I mean, all of these things need to be done, so I need this running until I've switched up the system completely, so I do need that to be popped in there. Let's make sure that the automation wires haven't melted. No, they made of steel as well. Good. Deconstruct. 109. You know, to be fair, my duplicants are actually incredibly happy. Quite a lot of them are running around with crazy happiness going on. Thank you. Now we need to deconstruct this. I'm going to need to set that up with a lower threshold as well. Okay. Hello everyone, just wanted to pop in and resub before I went back to finishing a crochet. Triceratops, wow. Hope you have a wonderful stream. Thank you very much. That's incredibly kind of you, deal. Right, now, what did I have this set to? I think it was like 500 grams. I think. I think it was 500 grams. Because I wanted to allow this liquid into the loop. Oh, actually, no, it's 10 kilos, so I want this to be 5 kilos. There we are. So the liquid is constantly filling up. But yeah, right now we're bringing this liquid back in. It's interesting because it's being allowed out. Why? Oh, because this is backing up a bit. Okay. That's why this needs to be slower, so this has a chance of filling up more. I think that's why this needed to allow it out slowly. So let's make that 2.5. Otherwise, it would just leave out here and then potentially come back in because this is blocked. This system needs a bit of fine-tuning, really. But now, this stuff actually does need to be let out. That is too hot. But the system is now working the way it's meant to. The liquid got too hot in here, so it's venting out the over-hot stuff. And some of it isn't hot enough now, but it's getting there. Kind of wish I'd seen all the beginnings of this great noodly masterpiece. I do not understand a bit of it. A bit of it or its purpose. Okay, well, Aavak, I am happy to explain it to you if you'd like. Let me slow time, so not too much can go wrong while it's happening. Okay, so zoom out. First and foremost, is there anyone else other than Aavak who needs a bit of a rundown on what the base is like? Because I'll adjust how much I explain. Yes, you can use ! archives to get a link to my second YouTube channel where I've got all of these on there. More goals wants one. Realityville would like it. Oh, do you think I actually would? Thank you. Okay. Well, there's a couple of people in chat who need a recap. All right, then. Well, we'll start at the top. Well, actually, we'll start in the middle. This is where we live. It is temperature controlled. I've got all sorts of things going on. I've got printable that I can deal with. My food is allowed out. It's just left here because this is maintained at a certain... it's basically in a CO2 bath. So everything here is sterile. No bacteria is surviving on this food, so I can just leave it there. Which means I can store enormous amounts of food in there. We've got a nice grand dining hall. People come down here, just grab the food, go and eat it over here. Each bedroom is set up such that I've got 4 different schedules, and each schedule has sleep and toilet time at a different time. So that at any time, each one of these like bunks, these 3-person barracks, if you like, only has 1 person sleeping. And then when that person wakes up, they'll go use the toilet, and then they'll leave. So I'm running 12 duplicants off 4 toilets, because there are only ever 4 people who are trying to use the toilet at the same time. Only ever 4 people trying to use the sink at the same time. Only ever 4 people trying to use the shower at the same time. There's a recreation room. We've got a little sun lamp in here. They can go and chill out. I do this after they wake up. I used to have their downtime be before they went to bed. That was a mistake. Now their downtime is after they've used the showers, because the reality is this thing, when they decide that they want to lie on a deck chair, they can stay there for half a day. Which is awful for my work productivity, but, you know, they're working hard. I'll allow it. However, when that was before they went to bed, they would forgo sleeping to rest on the deck chair. Now, personally, I feel that they should have been getting rest while just lounging on that deck chair, but no, the game disagrees, so that they would then randomly falling asleep all over the place. So I've moved that around a little bit. They can also get some pop, and some fizzy pop there. Got a massage station. Barely ever use it. I've never seen anyone need to use the area in here. It's even got salt on the tables. It hasn't been used. All of it is all plumbed in. We've got a little nature reserve down here, so they have to walk through here to exit the colony, to exit their kind of living quarters. And the trick with that is that they'll only get morale bonus if they move through this. But it's a huge amount of morale. It's like +6 morale. Every day when they wake up, when they go off to work, they have to walk through here, so they get a nice big happy time with that. Down here I've got some carbon skimmers, because although these are all oxyferns, they weren't quite able to manage all of the carbon, the CO2 being produced by my tubes in this area. To get out, this is maintained as a vacuum, so it's thermally non-reactive. Heat out here cannot get inside. This place is cooled using coolant that runs through the floors. So it's maintained at a certain temperature. It's half working right now because I haven't got enough coolant in the pipes, but I'll get to that in a moment. But to get out, they have to put on a suit, and then they have to leave via a transit tube. So there's no opportunity for these doors to open and gas to move back and forth. However, if the battery for the colony ever runs down completely, it disables the lock on this door, so they can walk out and back in as a fail-safe. If we're ever out of power, so they can't use the transit tubes, they can still get in and out. That's the biggest part of it. Then we've got a little animal ranch over here. This is also temperature controlled. Down here, not so, because the only reason I'm temperature controlling this part is because the plants that they eat need to be a certain temperature, but I've got a bunch of hatch ranches as well. This is the coolant pipe. It goes all over the place. Got a bunch of natural gas generators and a natural gas vent. It has a significant ability to back up the natural gas. We're not really making use of this right now, but we used to be. We did use it a while ago, but that's hopefully something we're going to get back to using. Down here, I'm trying to trying to deal with this ridiculous amount of CO2 we've got, because we've got CO2 geysers as well as loads of coal generators, which occasionally turn on. Everything is controlled by smart batteries. The coal generators are the last things to kick in. They're my last resort power generation. These are one of the first ones to kick in, and I've also got petroleum generators. But I've got a lot of CO2. So I've got a bank of CO2 scrubbers down here that try to work, but quite often can't, because I'm moving so much polluted water around. That's also something I need to fix. This is my very meager storage of polluted water and cool water right now. Let me just catch up on chat. Etar, thank you very much for the resub, mate. And Reality Veil for gifting a sub. That was really, really kind of you. Both of you, thanks. You would fall asleep in the sun. I would not. My body does not allow me to forget that I am in the baleful gaze of that hateful orb of fire, I cannot relax in the sun. Someone redeemed a gift sub. Oh, Bag UK finally managed to get enough points. Well done. For those of you who don't know how the gift sub channel point exchange works, at the end of the stream, I may need someone to remind me, because my streams can sometimes go on to the point where I am absolutely exhausted, and then, you know, certain things slip out of my brain, but do let me know. At the end of the stream, I will be gifting a sub to a random person. That's to get that's the second time, I believe, that's been redeemed. Anita, thank you very much for gifting 5 subs as well. Thank you very much. But yes, at the end of the stream, there shall be a gift sub made on behalf of Bag UK. Thank you so much for watching as much as you do to have built up those points. That was really, really kind of you. I'm always excited when I see that one get used. Right, so we've got water. The water system is actually being sanitized. We've got cooking out here and stuff like that. We've got an electrolyzer set up. We're sending some water over here. But the water flow moves from this area where I gather it and I process the grey water. So anything coming out of the lavatories and so on and so forth is made into germy water. That water is fed along. Now, some of it goes back into the system. Like, priority is given to go back into the sinks and toilets and the showers and all that sort of stuff. Delara, thank you very much for the resub as well. 11 months. Diolch yn fawr. Third or fourth time? Nope. It absolutely hasn't been redeemed 3 or 4 times. I do believe this. Oh, well, maybe it's been redeemed twice before, but I'm fairly certain it hasn't been redeemed 3 or 4. Absolutely. No. I don't know. The limit of 4 per stream is the mores. Those channel points are for me to stream a little bit longer. Typically, my streams are about 6 hours long, but if mores get used, then it adds 30 minutes to the minimum. But the water is given priority back into the grey water so that people have toilets and sinks to use. I am considering the next time I play, the next run I use, having a mod that makes it so that if you wash with germy water, you're still germy. Because it makes sense to me. But in vanilla, this is how it works. Water is then given priority to go up to my my sanitation station. What happens here is the water is allowed in only when this is empty. When this is empty, it sends a signal that allows this to start piping water back in. Any water with a germ will shut this off, so it can't escape. It can only leave this chlorinated room if it has no germs. Otherwise, it cycles back round and into the tank. Once the tank is mostly full, it sends a signal to shut this off, so no more germy water is allowed in. And so whatever's left in the pipes filters in and then just starts cycling back and forth, back and forth. And in a room full of chlorine like this, it takes about a full cycle, but after the cycle, all of the germs are dead because it's a highly sterile environment. In fact, it's not just sterile, it is actively toxic to germs. So it doesn't take very much time. It just cycles back and forth until it's non-germy and then starts flowing back out into the tanks down here. Now, once it gets down here, these tanks give priority to the tanks down here, which filter clean water. You don't need to use germ-free water for an electrolyzer. In fact, you can quite happily use germy water, but I've decided that I wanted to use clean water for it, so our oxygen is made with the purest of chlorine-scrubbed H2O, and then that turns into hydrogen and oxygen. Some of the hydrogen is captured and used to power the setup. It is completely self-powering and, in fact, generates an excess of hydrogen, which then filters down here and just gets added to the energy grid when there's an excess. The oxygen gets pumped into the base, and if there's too much, it gets vented out elsewhere. But that's how all of my my Atmos suits get maintained and how the atmosphere inside the base is maintained. But if the water can't go over here, then it goes over here instead, and then it gets priority sent to my bristle blossoms. First, it gets sent up here where it dumps a lot of its heat and equalizes the temperature a little bit in the what's left of a glacier biome. It's slowly melting. That's the glacier that's been there from the very beginning, and then gets fed into my bristle blossoms to make sure that they've got that there's plenty of food coming in. This is also a little bit of a cooling loop that remains. Any water that's left gets emptied into this tank, so that my dupes, if they need to pump water specifically, can do so. And that is that, basically. This tank has always got water. There's always water available. Any excess at that point gets pumped over here to the pop station so that they can have a nice fizzy drink. It makes them happy. This is where I cook my food. It's delivered by rail, then. If we go over to the rail loader. Delivered by rail in here. So raw food over here, cooked food over there. My dupes only eat cooked food. What else? This is going to be my industrial area eventually. I've already mentioned how I'm hoping to capture some of the waste heat and turn that into more energy. Down here, this is currently where my industrial stuff goes on. We're dealing with oil down here. All of this is cooled. If we go back to this. Right now, most of the base is cooled with polluted water. It's run through these aqua tuners, piped all the way back up into this tank where it equalizes its temperature, then gets piped through the base. Right now only half of its capacity is properly being used because the rest of it gets piped out this way to cool down my ranch, and then all the way up here to cool down my power generators, then back down. And at this point it's a little bit too hot. If this temperature is over a certain amount, then it bypasses. Right now the temperature, if it's above 25, it doesn't go in. I could probably have that a little bit lower, but it's not the case right now. That gets pumped across, and then through here. It equalizes a little bit of temperature with the Weezewort, so a little bit of passive cooling. Well, that's not entirely passive, but my Draco's massively overproduced phosphorite, so I don't need it. Does a little bit of cooling around the bristle blossoms, but I probably don't need that anymore. And then it filters back down, does a bit of cooling over here. This is one of my leaky oil fishes. This is outputting a decent amount of oil at a very, very hot temperature. So I need to cool that. So that's what this is coming in for. It's coming in here. It's cooling that water before it gets grabbed by the liquid pump and then sent down. I really should have added a little bit of an extra test in here to make sure that that wasn't too bad. I probably will, actually. To make sure that this pump doesn't activate when it doesn't need to. Comes down here. All the way down. Back through. I don't really need that in there. I'm going to be moving it down here to cool off. It runs through granite walls because the granite represents a very large mass. It's basically heat stone. But the mass in here is quite significant. There's 400 kilos of granite. So by piping the coolant through that, I'm allowing the granite to absorb, to also act as a heat exchanger. It can store a large amount of heat energy, and then dump that into the liquid in a very efficient way. I've still got some pipes in here as well. How it usually works out is the granite doesn't get hot, the granite gets cold because of the liquid moving through it, and then that helps to cool the rest of the room as well. But that helps cool out the room, and then gets fed back here where it gets recooled and then sent back into the pipe. Petroleum-wise, I'm delivering oil from these oil wells. This gets pumped as petroleum down here, in there, and then it gets used for power. If I've got an excess of petroleum, which I never seem to have anymore, then it gets used for plastic. And if I've got an excess still, then it can come up here and get entered into my coolant loop. Because this is ultimately the real cooler. It's small at the moment, it's only cooling a small amount of things, but this is where the real cooling for the base is going to come from. This coolant gets piped through 2 aqua tuners. They drink a lot of power, but they can cool this petroleum from a reasonably high temperature down to sub-zero temperatures. That gets stored and equalized in here, so we've got almost 4 tons at 5.7 degrees. That gets piped back out. If we have a look over here, this is controlled by a switch. So basically, if I want to turn off the cooler, the cooling of everything else and just keep it cycling, I can manually. There's no reason for me to do it. That was just early on from additional testing. But this gets brought up here, cools off this steam room. These aqua tuners produce enormous amounts of heat, and I'm capturing that and then delivering the water back at 95 degrees. So this keeps this room toasty, around about 200 degrees. The steam engine turns on, takes some of that steam, brings it back as much cooler water, so it's deleting the heat that these are producing. It is not running energy positive. This is running energy negative, but it's, you know, making use of some of that heat. This moves around. Mostly I'm using the steam engine to delete the heat, effectively. The petroleum then, a little bit warmer because it's been cooling this room, gets piped down through this system. And then, under normal operation, we'll just return back to the loop. It's not really doing much cooling because these are just regular pipes, but it's doing a little bit. However, this part is what I imagine most people are looking at and going a little bit cross-eyed over. This sensor here checks how warm the petroleum is. Because this area is built to be able to withstand temperatures up to 275 degrees, if the temperature of the petroleum is below 200 degrees, it's allowed to enter this system if it is desired. This tank tries to maintain about 1/5 of its capacity of petroleum. And I generally feel that you want a tank in the loop somewhere because it makes a very smooth temperature curve. You don't tend to get packets that are huge because the moment any liquid enters the tank, it instantly averages its temperature with everything else in the tank. So temperature differences happen very slowly and very smoothly. If this has got if this has got like 20% of its contents, then it prevents anything more being brought in. This liquid then just starts looping around. There is tungsten pipes here and there so that it can very efficiently grab that temperature. And so the petroleum starts rising in temperature. As you can see, it comes in here at 85.1, is leaving, well, it's leaving at 85.4 because I also have some Weezwort, so they're kind of adding an extra bit of cooling to the system. It grabs temperature from the generators down here, 83.5. Down here, 83.4. It's going through, slowly raising the temperature. This is also where my smelter is. If I turn the smelter on, it'll grab some of this petroleum and it'll add ridiculous amounts of heat to it. That gets pumped back into the system. That's usually when you see this system start to spike its temperature. If any of the liquid in here ever reaches 250 degrees, bearing in mind that everything here is built so it can withstand 275 degrees, it tries to evacuate eject that liquid back into the cooling loop. Once it starts doing that, this is no longer at 1/5 capacity, so it starts to accept cold liquid back into the loop. And so it starts to pull the temperature back down. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm not cooling the liquid to its lowest possible temperature all the time. I just need this liquid to stop this place from getting to 275. So there's no point in me taking like 100-degree liquid and then dumping it back out to get cooled again. That's a waste of power. I don't need to cool it that frequently. I only want to cool it when it's starting to get to the temperature where this facility can no longer realistically handle that. So it might come in at like 15 degrees, but it won't leave until it's 250. So that petroleum will do a lot of work in this loop. It will be here for quite some time, absorbing heat. But once it's too hot, it gets dumped back out, and that very hot petroleum now starts going through this whole loop and starts cooling down the loop in general. So that's how my coolant currently runs, and it's very different from the way this one runs. This one just pumps the coolant through everything, whether it needs it or not. Ultimately, I want to switch to a system where everything has a little bit more intelligence to it. It only accepts the coolant if it's below its desired room temperature, and only kicks it out once it's close to reaching that maximum. So, for example, over here, it would probably accept if it was below, let's say, 20 or 15, and it would only kick it out if it was above 25. Up here, much like down there, this would be like 200 and 250. My ranches would be maintained at different temperatures. Industrial bricks would, industrial areas would tend to have very hot temperatures. But that way, I'm only cooling things when I need to cool it. That's how I want to go about it. Does Oni model pipe pressure dynamics with regards to heat? Half and half. Not really. Basically, if anything, there are bursting pipes, Arik. There absolutely are. If a liquid state changes in a liquid pipe, it will break the pipe. So, if the liquid gets too cold, it'll expand because it's now a solid and it's taking up more room, it'll burst the pipe. If it becomes a gas, it'll take up enormous amounts of room. I mean, as a solid, it takes less room, but, you know, once it's solid, it's going to freeze the stuff coming behind it. It'll eventually break the pipe. It'll clog it up, and then the pressure behind that blockage, much like your arteries, if there's too much fat in it, it'll eventually burst. Bad times. It's slightly less traumatic when it's like your plumbing system rather than, you know, your arteries, but still, same overall idea. If it becomes a gas, suddenly that pipe is trying to contain something many, many times the volume that it should be. Pop. There it goes. But it'll only do it on state change. However, the game does take some kind of mathematical shortcuts because it's a game that's simulating enormous amounts of data. So there are shortcuts in here. If you keep the pressure, the liquid in the pipe below 1 kilo per packet. Each one of these is a packet. And a full packet of a pipe is 10 kilos. If you keep that liquid below 1 kilo, then it can state change in the pipe and it won't burst the pipe. But the moment it exits a vent, it'll be in its new state. So, for example, you know, if it's a gas, then it's going to come out of the liquid vent as a gas. If it's a solid, it'll come out of the liquid vent and immediately be a solid. So on and so forth. It's a way of you fudging the system, but I consider that unintended. It's just a way that they managed to make the simulation less CPU intense. And I imagine once, you know, more powerful computers become the norm, maybe they'll take that out and a bunch of builds will break. But I don't use it because I feel that is not the way it was intended to be used. Interestingly, gases work exactly the same. If you've got a gas in a gas vent and it becomes a liquid, it will break the vent. It'll break the pipe.